Okay, so we'll start. So good morning. So we'll start from the beginning because most of the participants they join right now. So with us. So good morning, Parami. Good afternoon, Marko, and good evening and good day, world all around the world. So on Friday we had Roy Anderson with us, education professionalist. Then on Saturday we had students around the world talking about their issues with this pandemic situation. Then on Sunday, we had Michael Gebawa meeting Senate Gunatileka, a student versus education professionals. Today we have about our last session. So another one of the giant in democratic education, Marko Koskinen, against Parami Jayakodi from USA. She woke up early in the morning at 4:30. So before we start the session, Parmi, I want you to introduce yourself. I know that you have already introduced, but most of our attendees they were not there. So introduce yourself first. And then this Parmi is up to you. It's like the program is all yours. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Noan. It's a pleasure to be here. Greetings to everyone around the world. My name is Parami Jayakodi. I'm 10 years old and I'm from the United States of America. I finished grade 4 and I'm going into grade 5 after the summer. Besides schoolwork, I really love to read. I also like arts and music. In our free time, me and my family like to do outdoor activities like hiking, camping, biking, and gardening. I also really like watching cartoons. And I really like trying out new activities and subjects. I find that some are more interesting than others. This is my first time doing a live discussion like this, so this is one of those things that I'm trying out. But I'm sure I will really enjoy it. I also started Kung Fu One martial arts when I was 6 years old, and now I'm 10 and almost a black belt. Even though we didn't get to do many things this summer, I found a way to make use of all my free time. I started to write a small book, and I started learning Spanish on Duolingo. And today our special guest is Mr. Marko Koskinen. I've heard so many great things about you. It's really good to meet you. Before we start, it would be amazing if you could introduce yourself so all of us here can get to know you better.
Parami, so the
I'm
program
with.
is up to you. So you can start it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Tommy. And it's amazing how you're spending your summer, and it's just nice to hear. So I'm still checking, making sure that everyone is able to join. I have many people asking questions. So just a few seconds more. So let's see. All right. So Nuan, if you can take care of everything else, I'll try to.
Okay, I'll take care of the other
focus on
thing.
the presentation from now.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So I have I've put or I created a Google Drive folder where I have a list of links and also the transcript for this session. So I will be sharing this link with you so you can open the folder and open the documents. And also I made a questionnaire, so I would like to get some feedback about the audience. So just a second, I'll send you the links. Maybe we start with the questions. So I'll just copy the link and write it on the chat. So all panelists and attendees there. So there's a link to the questionnaire on the chat. Hope you can open it. And while you're filling, maybe is there any possibility of getting feedback if the panelists are, or not the panelists, but the audience is able to see the link?
Yes, I can. Yeah, we can see it. So it's
Okay.
okay.
So I just wanted to know what kind of background do you have and what kind of interests do you have, so I can maybe modify my presentation based on your interests and backgrounds. And I will take the time to send the other link for the folder, so you can open the document for the transcript. So sometimes or many times listening to people online is problematic because of the connection or other reasons. So I thought it would be nice to have some kind of transcript, like Nuan created a good transcript for this session. So I will share it with you with all my answers or thoughts, so you can follow the discussion also using the transcript. So just a second, I'll send you the folder link.
Yeah, we got the links.
Okay, great. So
yeah, so I'll give it like, so Parmi, so it's up to you. Like, so you can ask your first question from Mr. Mark, like Mr. Mark Koskinen. So then we can start the session.
Okay.
So basically, maybe I'm still talking about, or I didn't start about myself yet. So should I go there first?
Please.
Let's Marco, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So basically, I want to talk quite a lot about myself first, because this is all about emotions and emotional development. And I want to use myself as an example of emotional development. So first of all, I think you need to know some things about my childhood and my background in order to understand where I come from. So I was born in 1973. The time, maybe a few words about the Finnish situation and culture. Basically, we fought in the Second World War. It was very difficult for us. So many of the men in Finland died during the war, and it left big scars for the culture and the people. And also earlier in the beginning of the 20th century, we had a civil war, which was also very dramatic for the people. So there are some cultural scars in our history. And also we've been shadowed by Russia, because we are right next to Russia. And that has caused many fears in people towards other nations and other nationalities. But I was born with both parents. I would say they were troubled in some way. My father was suffering from alcoholism, and my mother was suffering, of course, for the same reason, trying to keep the family together. And I took a role of taking care of my mother, basically, because she seemed troubled because of the situation. But I had lots of freedom, but because we lived in a quite remote area, I did feel loneliness and isolation. But I would say the first years of my life were quite happy. And I had a cousin who was taking care of me and who I felt that really loved me. So I had love, and my mother really took care of everything, all my physical needs and the environment that I felt safe. My father was mostly absent, working or having trouble with his alcoholic problems. But because of the remote area, I didn't have really friends around me. So when I went to school, I found it difficult to relate to other young people, other children my age. And also maybe because of the lack of father figure, I was a bit feminine, and I got bullied because of it. So basically my school years where I felt a bit isolated and separate and a bit different. Of course, the bullying kept going on, and during my first years of school, the bullying wasn't hard. Then I was moved to another remote location, and it was difficult for me to get to the new group, and the bullying kept going. So especially in my teenage years, I felt very lonely and isolated. And later in high school, I was a very good student, and the school was very easy for me, and I had good relationships with teachers, but very few good relationships with other students. So in the end, I started criticizing the education, and almost dropped out of high school in the latest years. But then after high school, I worked a lot with young people. I ran clubs and did some youth work, and started reading about books about like emotional development and psychology. And I found authors like Alice Miller, who kind of revolutionized my idea of education and upbringing. And eventually I found the book Summerhill, which totally transformed my view of education. And before that, I was planning to become a computer engineer, because I was like computers were very important in my childhood because I was mostly alone. So the computers kind of kept me company. And till today, I feel very safe and comfortable with all technical tools and computers. And since my teenage years, I've been running a computer company myself. But I got into the education because I read the book Summerhill. And I felt that I need to do something to change the how young people are educated, because I felt that I didn't get the support that I really needed during my school years, and the environment like Summerhill could have really benefited me. So I tried to figure out ways how to improve education, and I thought that if I could change the teacher education, then gradually the education in Finland could change. So I applied to become a teacher in the teacher education. And after half of years of studies, it became apparent that the system was really not serving any kind of change in the system. So I started a kind of rebellion. In one lecture, I went in front of the lecture room and told everybody that I will not participate in any testing anymore at the university, because I felt that if we wanted to change the education in a way that the students are, or the evaluation is not based on testing, but rather more humane ways of interaction, then we cannot have such things as testing in the university either. And this started a kind of a snowballing effect, ending up in a totally new type of teacher education, which until today is still running parallel to the traditional teacher education. So this was kind of a first win for me, that I felt that I can accomplish something big in my life. So I thought that the next natural step would be for me to start my own school. So I did a lot of research and visited several schools, especially democratic schools. And I went for 3 months to USA to visit the Sudbury Valley School, which is one of the most best known international or democratic schools. And there are, I think, more than 100 other schools based on that model in the world. And then finally in 2005, I was feeling that I'm ready to start my own school. So I announced in a newspaper that the school is starting and we are meeting in a public library. So anybody who wants to join is welcome to join. And that was the start of the school, which lasted for about 3 years. And then due to many complications or challenges, one of them being financial challenges, I decided to quit. And I went traveling with a friend of mine for 6 months, 4 months traveling in India. So the Indian culture became very, I got to know the Indian culture very well. But during the next 2 years, I started to think, how could I continue the school? Because many people kept asking if they could join the school online somehow, or in a distance learning way. And because I had this computer IT background, I decided to create an online platform to serve all the students in the Finnish scene. And the idea was to create a system which would allow everyone to have an easy access to online education and get rid of the schooling that was hurting many people, many young people. So in 2010, I started the online school, which is still running, and we have about 80 students at the moment. And recently, a year ago, I started planning another type of school, a boarding school, which is modeled by the Summerhill model, but with the focus of solving global challenges. So the students could join in and focus fully on global issues and trying to figure out ways to solve big problems. So this is basically my background until today. I've traveled the world a lot, joined many democratic conferences and meetings. And in 2016, I hosted one myself. And maybe one big thing about my emotional journey up till now is that about 20 years ago, I found, or I was invited into a meeting which was an introduction to a co-counseling group or organization, meaning that people from different kinds of backgrounds can come together and listen to each other in a very active listening way, so that we can start healing our emotional distresses. So I've been doing that for several years, which has helped me a lot with my own distresses from my own childhood, the bullying background, and many other distresses I had in my early years. So that was my not so quick story about my emotional background.
That's a really touching emotional story.
Thanks.
So I have some questions for you today.
Sure.
My first question is a simple question. Why do young people bully each other?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very personal question also for me, and I've given a lot of thought to the question, but I've come to kind of think it's as a structural issue. Let me just before I continue answering this question, I just take a quick look at the answers of the questions, if people have had an opportunity to answer the questionnaire. So it seems there are teachers from regular schools and university and college students and parents. And people are mostly interested in how to support schools to develop emotional well-being. And many people are interested in practical tools also. So I will try to answer those questions also. About bullying, let me also use a timer, because there's some science telling that people listening to other people can usually have about, on average, 7 minutes attention span. So I will put my timer on 7 minutes, and I will have a small break after 7 minutes, so people can just chew up or process what they've heard until then. So I see bullying being a structural issue mainly. I see bullying happening mostly because our schools are structured in a way that makes young people compete against each other rather than cooperate or support each other. So there are like punishment and rewarding systems and evaluation systems which make young people compete against each other and see each other as opponents rather than companions. By pushing someone else down in the classroom, you can kind of rise in the ranking in the classroom, and this way make yourself more important and have more power in the social environment of your classroom. So bullying is a kind of a natural result of this kind of hierarchical system. And also it becomes a social phenomena when the bully is someone high in the rankings, then the other young people, other children who are feeling less powerful feel that they need to support the bully in order to stay in the rankings and prevent from being bullied themselves. So it's a kind of safe measure to join in the bullying. And I've thought that there may be also some kind of benign, some good motivation behind bullying also sometimes. I think that the bully might see the struggles that the one being bullied might have, like maybe shyness or some other problems that they are trying to battle. And by bullying the person, the bully tries to kind of help the other young person to bring up these feelings. And of course, this is not happening intentionally. And of course, there would be better ways to do this. But I think there may be sometimes these kind of benign motivations behind bullying also. About the research, there's a lot of research about bullying, and there are many programs to cut down bullying. And many of them are somewhat effective. The research shows that on average, the programs have about 20% effectiveness. So they cut down the bullying about 20%. But of course, it doesn't solve the problem. And I want to emphasize the structural issues, because I see that no program can really solve the issue as long as the structural things are kept in place, making the bullying part of the structure. So if you are a teacher and if you want to stop bullying in your school or in more educational establishments, I think you need to focus on these structures. I think you need to change the evaluation system, the rewarding system, so that the students don't need to compete against each other, but rather reward for cooperative behavior, emotional supportive behavior, and other behavior which supports the cooperating culture rather than competing. So that was my basic answer for the bullying.
But don't you think that that wouldn't the bullies stop after some period, especially since the stop bullying, like everyone wants to stop bullying, and like I was thinking about it, and wouldn't they stop since they're like hearing it everywhere, like stop bullying?
Yeah, as I said, that because our schools are structured in a hierarchical way, we have the teacher who has all the power, and many times the teacher isn't very skillful in emotional healing or emotional development. So she or he doesn't know how to support the students' well-being very well. So he or she ends up keeping up the structures inside the classroom, which direct the students to maintain this kind of hierarchical system inside the classroom. So there are more powerful students and less powerful students. And the students are not being taught how to support each other, but rather the culture is about competing against each other. Especially in India, for example, they have these rankings published every now and then in the newspapers, telling whose students are better and who are worse. So it's also public information and public kind of humiliation, which creates this kind of scared and scared atmosphere. And in this kind of atmosphere, it's very difficult to change from this kind of competing atmosphere into supporting atmosphere, especially if any of the higher ranking students keep on bullying. So it's really difficult as a student to stop it. You need a really strong self-confidence, good support from your parents and family in order to feel confident enough to stop bullying. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Good.
And my next question is, I know that some kids become bullies because they're being bullied or they're troubled. But even though there are many other options like anger management classes or counseling, why do they start the bullying?
Yeah, I think, as I told earlier, I think the similar answer can come here. I think the bullying starts sometimes partly from the good motivation of helping the other students, because they can see the trouble the other students are in, but also because of the structure, the power structure. So putting down the student who is already suffering would help the more powerful or more self-confident students to still keep on raising in the rankings. And also sometimes it prevents the bully from being bullied themselves, or helps them to kind of hide their own lack of self-confidence, maybe.
Thank you. And my next question is, how can the schools take care of kids' emotional well-being?
Okay, so I think we've run for at least 7 minutes now. So let's take like half a minute break so everybody can think about what we talked until now. Like a half-minute silence. And if you want, you can check the links, for example, what I have put on the folder. All right, maybe we can continue. So how can schools take care of children's emotional well-being? That's a huge question. Like I think many countries are really struggling with this question. Earlier in earlier decades, this question wasn't important. People basically thought that school is not a place, or the purpose of the school is not to take care of the emotional well-being of the students. That's the job of the family, basically. But what people basically didn't realize is that because many families cannot really support the well-being of the child as well as they are kind of supposed to, there are many students who suffer emotionally already when they come to school. And because they are emotionally suffering, it is very difficult for them to learn anything new, because most of their attention goes to the suffering they are feeling inside. So it's very important for schools to take responsibility also for the emotional well-being of the students. And I thought at first we need to acknowledge some of the structural issues in the schools which decrease the well-being of the students, or at least don't help in any way. So one thing is that many of the classes are boring. Students are not interested in the content, or they know already what is being taught, or they don't know enough to be interested in it, or have any kind of framework where to put the information. So this makes the students confused about the importance of the information being taught. And also, of course, there are people like Sugata Mitra, a researcher who has done a lot of research about how students can learn without being really taught, how they can learn or teach themselves, basically. And this is also part of the democratic education philosophy. So in order to make sure that students are motivated, one solution is to stop teaching, basically, because then the student can decide what to learn themselves and focus on the things that they are interested in. And then the learning is self-motivated, and the motivation is already there. And it's certain that the student is motivated to learn. Another problem in schools is that students are being evaluated, rewarded, and punished. So there's this kind of authoritarian conditioning mechanism going on. making the students emotionally dependent on the school or the teacher. Then this classes are structured so that they make students passive receivers rather than active learners. So this usually creates this kind of intellectual dependency, making the students think that they are not capable of teaching themselves or learning things unless there's someone who teaches them. And also the constant evaluation results in a kind of provisional self-esteem, meaning that the self-confidence of the student is dependent on the teacher's evaluation. So if the teacher says that you are not achieving well, the student interprets that he's not or she's not good as a person also. It's not only about the skill level, but it's also a personal feeling. And students have no privacy in the school. They are all the time they are being monitored, and the teachers are supervising them. So this results in many of the students shutting down themselves in order to kind of fit in to the system. And this happens especially to the emotional part of the students. In most schools, students have no power over their own environments or studies. And this makes them feeling indifferent or powerless. And of course, if we want to build any kind of democratic or active societies, this kind of education doesn't help at all. It just makes people powerless and feeling indifferent about their environment. Students are divided by age, sometimes by skill level or gender. The groups are isolated from each other. So you only have this small group of people, usually the same age, many times similar social background. And you have no way of interacting with the other groups. And you didn't choose, and you have no way of choosing the social environment you are in. And usually in the classroom, there's also no way of escaping the social situation. So it's a very artificial and limiting social environment. And also teaching everyone the same amount of same things maintains the differences rather than creates more equality. Many times we rationale that because we give everyone the same amount of information, it's equal. But that's not the case. It just maintains the differences because the people coming from less beneficial background don't have the same capacity to learn the information. In order to create more equality in the classroom, the content should be divided so that everyone gets what they need rather than same thing for everyone. All right, so let's have a half-minute break for everyone to process. Okay, let's continue. Also, the research about emotional well-being is quite conclusive that learning is most effective when the student is motivated to learn and is feeling positive emotions. especially feeling interest in the content. Things like feeling safe. Maybe this could be a good moment when I could share the kind of wheel of emotions, so you can see what I'm meaning here. So I'll share my screen. So this is one of the, let's see, I can actually have it from another source. Can you see that picture? And one, can you see the picture? Can you see my screen?
We can see it. We can see it clearly.
Okay, good. Yeah. So this is one way of dividing emotions. So there's like high activity or high negative effects and low negative effects, and high positive and low positive effects. So there's a kind of division between activity and also positive and negative feelings. So there's elated, enthusiastic, excited, strong feelings, being content, happy, kindly or pleased, satisfied, and warm-hearted are pleasant feelings. And if there's strong engagement, there's aroused or astonished or surprised, or some low negative effects like calmness or relaxed feelings, or high negative feeling or being distressed or hostile, and so on, and other negative feelings here down. So we can use these kind of tools. There's like other emotional wheels that you can also use inside classroom to teach the students about emotions and how they are divided, for example. Emotions can basically be divided into several parts, or how to approach emotions. First of all, you have the feeling. Then you have the kind of how to interpret the feeling, how do you acknowledge it, and then is how do you show the feeling, how do you communicate the feeling, and then of course there's how do you interpret feelings in other people. So these are some aspects of how to approach learning about feelings. Let's see, one more. So I'll stop sharing. So there's there are many kind of structural solutions available. So if we what I put some of the solutions on the link page. Maybe I can still share my screen so we can check some of the links that I put on the page. So especially here in the alternative education part. A bit bigger. For example, the school in the cloud, the Sukata Mitra approach, self-organized learning environment is one example where young people come to the classroom normally, but instead of the teacher taking charge or start to teach something, the teacher gathers this group of students in a circle, and they discuss what would be interesting for them to learn. And the students come up with things that they want to learn at the moment. And then they vote about one or two about those questions that are interesting for the students. And then they go on the computers in small groups and research on those questions. So it's a very active process. And after the research, they come together again to the circle, and they share what they found out. So this is one way of making sure that the thing that the students are learning is actually interesting for the students, and also that how they are learning is beneficial for everyone because everyone is active in the process. Then there's the Montessori education method, where they have lots of different kinds of learning tools that the students can get to know and use for learning. And it's also a very active process. There's a separate time which is reserved for using the tools, and the student can decide which tool to use. So it also makes sure that the student is interested in what they are learning, which the research shows that improves learning greatly. So once again, 7 minutes has passed. So let's take half-minute break. All right. So the Frenet pedagogy, Celestine Frenet was a French teacher who, after the I think it was the First World War, who got injured in the war, and felt that he didn't really want to stay inside the classroom with the students. So a lot of the time they went out to the nature together with the students and had lots of interesting discussions. And he started developing a method where the students are actually working on real life problems or tasks. So the students are actually doing real work rather than studying something theoretical. The Reggio Emilia approach is a very social learning process where the learning is comes from the community. I'm actually not an expert about the Reggio approach, so you can learn more about it. But it also emphasizes student participation, democratic approach, and the community. Then Paulo Freire was a teacher or a philosophist in Brazil, and he developed this kind of pedagogy of the oppressed. So his idea was that that many of the people are in a position of being oppressed by the society, and he wanted to change the situation so that the oppressed groups could be empowered and rise from their position. And then the last one is the Alternative Education Resource Organization, which has loads of resources about alternative education. and I highly recommend of researching on their websites. And let's get back to the other topics. There's this thing called social emotional learning, which is considered by nowadays researchers a very important way of teaching emotional development for students in schools. Then many teachers use mindfulness or compassion. And one thing is also nonviolent communication, which is also a very interesting approach. Sociocratic decision-making is one thing that I want to also give some ideas. I've talked a little bit about democratic education, and the word democratic many times raises the idea that there's a majority who can decide, basically. So we vote and the majority rule becomes the rule. In sociocratic decision-making, the things are discussed until everybody agrees. Not necessarily they have to agree, but they can a certain decision. So it's more about coming together with a creative solution rather than majority decision. So these are just some ideas how to help or build the structure in a way that helps students develop social and emotional well-being. And I still want to emphasize that many of the structures in the schools, in the regular schools, prevent students from developing well-being. So first of all, I encourage all the students and the teachers to put energy on changing the structures first. But even in difficult structures, in rigid structures, it's possible to create emotional well-being by creating the environment as safe as possible, creating a loving atmosphere, showing caring, practicing active listening, for example, listening to the worries of the children actually and honestly, and maybe teaching the students to listen to each other also and supporting each other. So there are many ways of helping students. So let's see. Yeah, maybe that basically covers what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's a very great explanation. Yes, thank you. My next question is, since the home and the school are both very important, how do you divide the responsibility between the school and the home on kids' emotional well-being?
That's also a very, very good question. And I think the situation in recent years has changed quite dramatically. Like earlier, we basically thought that the role of the family is to create the safety and the emotional well-being of the students. And the role of the school is to teach information and the knowledge of the society, and maybe also transfer some of the norms of the society. So basically, the raising up part was the work of family, and the teaching part was part of the school, or the responsibility of the school. But with modern research and information, it's become apparent that both emotional and informational or knowledge learning happens all the time. So you cannot really divide the responsibility between family and the school, because all the time we are developing both emotionally and intellectually. But I made some distinction here. So the 7 minutes ran out, so maybe the audience can think about this question, and I will return after half a minute. All right. So I'll try to give my answer. So basically, the school has more diversity of experience. So there are teachers who have diverse background and diverse experience. So I think the schools could and should carry more responsibility of introducing the students to more diversity of topics in life. But about the well-being, the emotional well-being, of course, it's both the responsibility of the family and the school. But since the parents or the relationships inside the family are usually more stronger than in schools. So the family should probably carry more responsibility about the emotional well-being of the child. And of course, the early years of the child is inside the family, and they are crucial for the emotional well-being. So what parents can do is to take a responsibility of their own well-being, own emotional well-being first. So this is something that let's see if I should talk about it. Yeah, I'll talk about it later maybe. So the parents should look into their own childhood and acknowledge where they got hurt, what kind of distresses they have had in their own childhood, and what kind of distresses they are still carrying on, what kind of coping mechanisms they created, where they are being rigid, where they are easily emotionally triggered. And also they should acknowledge their background of class, racial or ethnic background, and cultural background, so they can help their children to be more aware of their environment and background, and prevent from transferring the same distresses that they got themselves as children or young teenagers. So for the school, the responsibility, of course, is to look at the structures of the school which prevents the well-being, and then build structures and environment that is more beneficial for the well-being of the children. So I suppose that was my kind of short answer to this question.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Koskinen. That was a really clear answer. I really understood that. My next question is, how important is play for learning, and why do children naturally like to play?
That's a cool question. So I think play is a very, very crucial thing in learning that we way too often dismiss as being something non-important. We've been kind of brainwashed to believe that learning happens in this kind of awkward and weird environment of school, and that it happens when someone is teaching someone else. And this is pretty much the only way that learning happens. And that's what we are told. But in reality, we learn by playing. That's the natural way for people and for most mammals, for example, to learn, especially social skills, but also many other skills. If we look at research work that is done in universities, it has many similarities to natural play. For example, the researcher has a question in mind that she wants to know more about. So she starts probing about different alternatives and then trying if they work, and find out that they don't work, and come back together, try again another solution, and that doesn't work either. So she tries different kinds of alternatives. And this is the same way that happens, same thing happening in play, natural play. Children go to the play yard, they see different kind of tools or playthings there, they try them out, create new kinds of ways to interact with the environment, and they meet other children there, and they connect with them, try different things, see which works and which don't. They get disappointed, they get lots of different emotions, and they work out the relationships and the environment by playing. This is the natural way of interacting with our environment and to learn new things. And usually this is totally disregarded in schools. Many times in kindergartens and childcare, play is still valued as a kind of natural thing that happens for children. But it's not also there. It's many times it's not encouraged, but it's just allowed. Like in many schools, we have recess where children are let free to play and explore. But the function of the recess is not really seen as a way to learn new things, but rather just to vent out things happened in the classroom and to get more energy to focus in the classroom. But I think the opposite should be happening. We should focus more on the recess and what's being learned there, and use the classrooms to kind of reflect what happened in the recess. I think that would be much, much more effective way of learning. So, did you think that answered your question?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Koskinen. That I really appreciate you taking your time to answer our questions and to help us. And thank you so much for your valuable time and answers. And the session really helped me, and I hope it also helped the audience.
Yeah.
And we have questions from all around the world. But before that, I have a question for Mr. Nuwan.
Yeah.
That question is, what is the purpose of doing a webinar series like this?
Right. So thank you very much, Parami. So it was like great session. You're asking like why we organize this. Now this is a situation. I used to go to this like there's like a food shop. I used to go there. So once a month, like I used to eat from that place. So the owner of the food shop comes and asks, so what do you feel about our food? Are there any development to be made? I just wondering why he's asking this one. So the reason is always he's trying to provide the best service for his customers. So he also like check what they are going through. But like when we think about education, the students are the ones who are like learning, and teachers are the ones who are like teaching. But like I think apart from Finland, most of the countries around the world, they don't ask before they make policies for education. They don't ask even from students, not even from teachers. So like the policies are coming from the top, so they don't bother like how they are covered, what the students are going through it, whether they are receiving what they really want. So that type of problem is there around the world. So I thought of first we'll take the professionals. So that's why Friday Roy Anderson came and tell his views. Then we took the kids around the world, like in Voice 2. That's why on the Saturday, all the kids around the world, they came and they talk about their problems. Now, yesterday and today, now we have kids meeting educational professionals and they are discussing with each other. So that's the conversation we are supposed to have. So this conversation will help. Now, your questions will help Marko to like think twice before he make a next decision. So, and his views will pass into you, and you know that why he's trying to do this. So that's because you are the like kids are the future of the like education. So they are going to take over the world. So we want the kids to take over and take the ideas from us and take it further. So before I'm going for the question and answer, I should really thank Marko because he's the one like I am like I am open to the globe. So I can remember like he tried so many times because as Sri Lanka it's really hard to get into Finland. So he tried to like very hard to get me into the Finland, and he showed me he opened up. It's like he widened the like what you call like my view on education. So thank you very much, Marko, before everything like for that great service. So you change a lot. So we are like we are expecting to make a huge difference in the future. So with this education, so I'll start with my first question. So we have a question from Mohammed from Algeria. So he's asking, now democracy is mainly based on majority decision. He's asking, do you think that the majority will always take the correct decision? Over to you, Marko.
That's a very good question. And there's some known philosophist said that the majority always makes the wrong decision. And that's a very interesting approach. I'm not sure if it's always the wrong one, but it certainly isn't the right one either, always. So that's why sometimes I prefer the idea of sociocracy or mutual or common decision making, which is based on conversation rather than voting. And of course, in most democratic schools, there's a lot of discussion before voting. So it's not just that there's a proposal and people vote, but there's a lot of discussion, and the voting happens only after nobody has nothing to say more. The benefit of voting is that you don't have to agree. You can just say that I don't agree, and this is not my decision, and I can live with it, but I still disagree. The sociocratic model, for example, it takes much more time because everyone has to somehow agree. But in the end, you might become with more creative solutions also. So if you have more time and it's not a crucial or urgent decision to make, I'd rather use the sociocratic model. But if it's just simple decisions that need to be made, then the voting might be a simple way to do it.
Thank you, Marko. Thank you very much. So we have another question. Richardson from Australia. So he's asking, are you satisfied with the Finnish education system on emotional development on children?
There's been a lot of developments in recent years in the Finnish schools. I went to some regular schools, visited a couple of them last year, So I had some idea of what's happening in the schools at the moment. But still, most of the structures that I told before that are kind of not beneficial for the students are still in place, even in Finnish schools. So even if there are some programs for emotional well-being and the Finnish curriculum emphasizes emotional well-being, there are very few structures and very few kind of models how to actually do that. So maybe this is a good point where I can show one attempt to how to make it better. So it's also linked in the link file. So let me open it and see. It's titled School Day, and I'll share my screen. So this is a new service that is offered for schools. And the idea is that the students can answer different kinds of questions on their mobile during the school day and after the school day, so that the administrators and teachers get feedback on what's working and what's not working. And it's a very simple tool to use, and it gives easy graphics and feedback for the adults to work on. And this is especially used for emotions and emotional well-being. So the students can kind of tell how they are feeling related to different kinds of topics. So I encourage you to look into this service if you are interested in using something similar for your school. Yep, that's it.
Okay, so thank you very much, Marko. So we have another question. I think it's asked from Finland. So Bruno from Finland. So he's asking, how do you think academia and research could support the development of different understanding in education? Do you think it is possible for change from inside the system? So that means, is it possible to make a change from inside the system? So he's talking about, I think, universities and academia in this case.
Yeah. As I talked shortly in my kind of personal introduction, I was part of a group that started a new kind of teacher education in Helsinki University. So this proved that the change can happen inside also, but it took us 2 years to accomplish the new system. And it's still, after 20 years of being in operation, is still bombarded by the traditional system, and there's still pressure to it's kind of being hidden and not emphasized by the majority. So creating the change inside is really, really difficult. It's possible, and I encourage everyone to try. And especially the students inside universities, you should definitely not conform to any kind of structures which are not beneficial for you. You can and you should demand change.
Right. Thank you very much, Marko. So since we are running out of time, so we'll take another question from Khalid Rahman from South Africa. So he's asking, why exams still exist in democratic country, and what can be done for that?
Can you repeat, please?
He's asking why exams still exist in a democratic country, and what can we do for it?
Yeah. Yeah, the exams is kind of a result of the old paradigm of education, which was based on the model, kind of the rat experiments where people are seeing as animals who are kind of herded with different kinds of stimuli, and rewards and punishments are part of this system. So having exams was a key part of kind of controlling the students. And since the school system was built in a way that it basically brainwashed us to believe that this is the only way how we learn and become successful in our lives. So it's very hard to change this kind of concept.
Okay, thank you very much, Marko. So we have plenty of more questions. So, but like the time is running out. So, but I think like Marko will like put his contact. I think you have put your contact details in those documents. Yeah. So usually you can contact. So first of all, I would like to thank Parami. She's like woke up early in the morning, 4:30 a.m. Like waking up in 4:30 a.m. in USA. It's a difficult task, and she's the one who prepared the schedule for the like webinar. So I think Marko, it was like she has done it really well. So Parami, so before we sign off like from it, so any final comments from you, and you have any more doubts to now, it's your chance to, if you want to like more doubts to clarify from Mr. Marko, you can ask from him, or any more final comments.
I'd like to thank Mr. Koskinen and Mr. Nuwan for making this wonderful session possible. And I really appreciate Mr. Koskinen giving us his time and valuable ideas. And this really helped me. So now I really understand about like emotional development, and I know what to do now if something happens to me. And thank you so much to Mr. Nuwan for making this wonderful session possible and letting us be able to take this wonderful opportunity.
All right. Before we sign on, Parami, there's a question for you from Emmy. How did you interested in this topic? So why you are like so interested in this topic? She feel that the way you ask questions, you know about certain things in about bullying. So why you are interested in this topic? So she's asking your ideas.
Well, I'm like, when I was little, I really wondered why people couldn't just be nice to each other and just stop bullying. So I like became interested in that, and I saw that those some bullies were also like troubled and angry, or and they were sad as well. So I thought that like bullying was an important topic, because even though the bullies seem like they are powerful and they have everything they want, they might still be sad inside because they are lonely or insecure. So I really want to end bullying. So yeah, I'm very interested in this topic ever since I was young.
Right. Thank you very much, Parami. So thank you very much for your valuable time. Thank you very much, Marko, for joining with us. So before we signing off today, any final comments from Marko for the audience?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of things that I wanted to share, but maybe we don't have time for them. So I want to just emphasize still that you can use the links, documents, and if you have any links that you would like to be added to the file, please send me, and I will add to the file. And in the folder, there's this theory of re-evaluation counseling document, which I was planning to present also. It tells in pictures how we get distressed and what the effects of emotional distress.
Marko, I think we can have like 2 minutes and we can like share, because like since those are like very, very valuable things, so we can like, so I think our participants, they won't like, they are still like into it. So just okay, yeah, we can.
All right, so I'll just quickly share my screen and do a quick browse through the document so you get an idea, and you can research more afterwards. So can you see it? Is it visible for you? Okay, yeah.
It is visible.
So, yeah. So basically the theory of revelation counseling is that it's a process where any people can join in and learn to support other people by active listening. And here's a kind of a quick idea of how we get distressed and what we can do about it. So this is a picture of human intelligence and kind of model of how we interact with our environment. We have our senses and we store the memory inside our mind. And this is the natural process how it goes. We have our flexible mind, which we use to process the information and create memories. But then something distressful happens and we cannot really process it. So it becomes a kind of a block and we cannot put it into the normal memory files. And it gets kind of stuck in there. And once we get more and more distressful experiences, they start to create a kind of a recording. When we face a new experience which is resembling to the old distresses, it kind of starts replaying the record. So instead of seeing the reality as it is, we see it as it was in our original distress experience. And we feel the same emotions that we felt then. And the distresses start to accumulate. And they accumulate and accumulate and accumulate until we reach adulthood. And this is kind of the picture of a normal, successful adult in our society. And they've gathered lots and lots of distress feelings. And most of their behavior is based on these distresses rather than flexible thinking and seeing the reality as it is. So our perception of the reality is kind of blocked by all these kinds of distresses. And that's why adults behave in so weird and funny ways in so many times. So basically, have we lost our capacity to think clearly? But is there a way of kind of releasing or changing the situation? So in a situation like a child, when she faces something distressful, the natural response is that she tries to look for someone comforting. And when she finds it, she starts to get the feeling out. Basically, it's usually crying or having a tantrum or somehow getting the emotion out. And culturally, this is usually seen as a disturbing behavior, a bad behavior, and it's blocked. And that's why these distresses stay inside us rather than being freed and being able to process as information. So if we encourage young people or anybody to just get the feelings out, we show them loving encouragement and active listening and being present with them, then they can process the distress and get it out, and it doesn't stay inside the mind blocking the flexible thinking. So the discharge should not be interrupted, but rather encouraged and strengthened. And when the discharge is over, when the child has cried enough, the world is again open to them and they are feeling positive feelings. And there are, of course, there are many kinds of ways to show the emotions. If you are fearful of something, you might shake or have sweat in your body. If you face injustice, you might want to rage and kind of regain the power inside you by using the power. In embarrassing situations, you might laugh. And if you are injured physically, yawning is a kind of natural response to that. And this process works for people of all ages, so it's available for everyone if we just find even enough contradiction to the distress. So if we find people who love us, show us attention, we can start discharging our distresses. So this is a very
Marko,
simple.
small disturbance. So one of our panelists asked, what does contradiction mean in this context? He just want to clarify. Sorry for disturbing.
Yeah. So the contradiction is basically something that's different from or opposite from the distressful situation. So, for example, if a young child is left alone, the distress is feeling lonely and not having the parent there. And when the parent returns, that's the opposite of being lonely. So this child starts to cry because she was left alone and felt alone. But she starts crying only after the parent returns. She might cry a while if the parent is absent to kind of try to get the attention. But if nobody comes, the crying stops also. But it starts again once the parent returns. So it's a kind of a natural response to the when we get enough opposite situation for the distress. Yep, that's it.
Mark, what you're saying is, even when the child stops crying, the damage, the distress is being accumulated when the parents are not there.
Yeah. If the parents are not there, the crying is kind of more about trying to get the attention, not so much about discharging the emotion.
Param, I think this provides the answer for your question also. You asked the people who are bullying also having some psychological impacts. That means I think you got the answer. That means they have been also gone through the same physical process, so therefore they want to hurt others. That's what you are trying to emphasize, Marko, no?
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
So Parami, so you won't have any question? I think now it's up to you to ask that question from Mr. Marko. So is it clear for you, that question? Did you clear it up?
I think it's clear, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything that you want to mention? I think that's one of the important place. I think our audience, they didn't think anything about it because it's one of the valuable points. Any more points hidden with you? We don't want to let you go without hitting things out.
I think that was the most crucial thing that I wanted to show. Yesterday, while preparing for this presentation, I watched the movie Inside Out, and I highly recommend it. It's a really good scientifically quite accurate presentation of emotions inside us and how they direct us. And there's the article of Science of Inside Out also. So I encourage you to watch this movie in the classroom if it's possible, and discuss about it. It might be a good way to start processing this thing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marko. So I think most of our attendees, I think you have Marko Koskinen's details. I think Marko, you gave them a link to communicate you. So if you have any doubts, please be free to contact Marko. So Parami, once again, thank you very much for your cooperation. So she's like only 10 years old, and I would like to apologize from our audience the technical difficulties we had at the beginning. Sorry, it's those type of things are normal. So like it's make it stressful. So that might be the reason. I think anyway we did a great session. Thank you very much, Marco. Thanks again. It's a wonderful to meet you like each and every time. So that's Marko Koskinen. So that's the end of SLDEC 2020. But tomorrow, at the same time, we are going to release a presentation from Dina Kraus from Germany, and it will be a pre-recorded one. It won't be a live session. So all our live sessions, you will be able to watch it in our YouTube channel. So if you like log into our YouTube channel, Sri Lankan Dreams, so what will happen? All these videos will be there. So otherwise, you can log into us in our Facebook like web page www.srilankan.dreams.info. That's our like web page. So if you have any doubts, any comments regarding it, you can put it there. So thank you very much for all of you. So like hope you will have a great day. So in the future, we are trying to do more session like thing. I think this way we can reach more audience than in normal context. Thank you very much, Marco. So you have any final comments, Marco?
Well, thanks a lot, both of you. Parmi, you were very clear, and your questions were excellent. So I really highly appreciate your being here. And organizing these kind of events is crucial for any kind of change. So thank you very, very much. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Parvi, any more comments from you before we sign out?
It's just thank you again to Mr. Nuwan and Mr. Koskinen and to all the audience that came. I hope everyone learned something new.
Okay, so thank you very much for joining with us. So like we'll hope to like join with you like in the future, in the near future with a bigger event and where we can communicate more people into this event. Right. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Like I can't tell like because some of you are like in different time zones. Right. Okay. Okay. See you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.